From the beast of Javadin to the Jersey Devil, here are the most fascinating mythical creatures. David Black lives in the Garden State in the United States, and he was in the news a lot in 2015. While driving home after a day of work, he spotted what looked like a llama in the woods, but he wasn't quite sure what he was seeing. Indeed, the animal which aroused his attention had a strange look, and David Black, giving in to curiosity, had gotten out of his vehicle to photograph and identify it. But immediately, according to his statements, the animal spread its wings and flew away. But the flight of this strange creature did not prevent David Black from photographing it. And if at first, he couldn't believe his eyes, the photo, at least, presented him with the evidence. The shapeless and mysterious animal had a goat's head, bat wings, a forked tail, horns, and hooves. It could only be the legendary Jersey Devil. He was absolutely convinced. He was both amazed and frightened by this encounter, for throughout his childhood he had been told sinister and fascinating stories about this monster that gave him nightmares. Understandably, the Jersey Devil is one of the evilest of all mythical beasts. The legend that surrounds him would have originated in 1735. A woman, it is said, gave birth to this monster. It then killed her before fleeing. Since then, it is said that the Jersey Devil sometimes causes panic among the population. David Black knew all this, and he was determined to warn people of the threat. So he alerted the people of his town and even received serious media attention. ABC News interviewed him, and it was an opportunity for him to reiterate that the Jersey Devil, which he saw with his own eyes, could rip children from cradles and steal souls if the population did not get to safety quickly. But the population, far from worrying about the demonic creature, openly mocked him, calling him crazy, superstitious, and enlightened. But David Black, as a self-respecting whistleblower, did not give up. And if he met with disbelief, he still had the best intentions in the world. And besides, no one could change his mind about what he saw, the famous Jersey Devil. In the past, in the peoples of Central and Eastern Europe, the belief in the existence of vampires was sincere. Indeed, the Slavic populations were convinced that these evil creatures fed on the vital essence of other beings at nightfall. According to these beliefs, people who have taken their own lives, practiced witchcraft, are not baptized, or have committed crimes are most likely to become vampires after their death. Their evil spirit takes over their decaying bodies. These people were very afraid of them, and they were very anxious to protect themselves from them, especially since, in their beliefs, vampires were not afraid of daylight. To recognize a vampire, these people went about it in one way. They dug up the corpse and assessed its decomposition. Corpses in good condition were the most suspect, and since these people did not know that blood naturally accumulates in certain places due to gravity, forming reddish spots, they thought that the deceased had been gorging himself with blood the previous nights. Then it was necessary to purify it. To do this, nothing could be simpler. A wooden stake had to be driven into the body of the deceased. They were sure that this process would drive out the evil spirit that had created the vampire for good. If another one came to threaten them, they would always have recourse to garlic, the crucifix, and holy water, which had proven to be effective. But it is more likely that these blinded people were guilty of desecration, by disturbing the rest of the dead and mutilating the corpses. Today, the myth of vampires, enriched by literature, remains very popular, but fortunately, we no longer come to stab the dead in their graves. The Indian Wars, which pitted the North Americans against the European settlers, were the scene of all kinds of atrocities, as you know. And in the depths of winter, snow and famine often made life unbearable for all the warring parties. In these austere times, it was not uncommon to observe that some people, in order to survive, resorted to cannibalism, and this foul practice became more and more frequent. The natives who occupied the lands of Canada and the United States, known as the Algonquian people, were concerned about this, and it was necessary to think of a way to curb anthropophagy as soon as possible. Now, to bring about a change in habits, even extraordinary ones, it was necessary to create fear. These peoples, therefore, spread the rumor that there was a truly demonic creature called wendigo. It's simple. This black-skinned, hideous, emaciated demon, who gave off an atrocious smell of decay, was a combination of all possible monstrosities. He killed and devoured men, women, and children, and he was particularly cruel to those who ate human flesh. This legend, when put into circulation, had the gift of frightening the least resistant and most credulous minds. And one can imagine that for a time, anthropophagy was no longer a worrying problem. However, the myth of this monster has not been forgotten. It has continued since those dark times to haunt the imagination of communities. Over the centuries, the legend of the Wendigo's existence has acquired more than mythological importance. In psychiatric literature, the term Wendigo psychosis is used to describe the cannibalistic tendencies of criminals and the insane. Ever since you were a child, you have been told fairy tales about unicorns. You picture these fabulous animals as enchanting creatures, and as a child, your greatest wish was to know that they were real. As you love unicorns, you know a lot about them. You know that these mythical creatures have been very present in the Western imagination since the Middle Ages until the Renaissance, that their horns were bought and sold, which were in fact the teeth of a narwhal, a fish living in the North Pole. You also know that these are creatures whose legend is extraordinarily rich and varied. One day, by chance, you realized that your childhood dream was fulfilled. Indeed, you read several very serious articles that attested the existence of unicorns in prehistoric times. Russian scientists found and examined a well-preserved skull in Kazakhstan, belonging to an animal known as the Siberian unicorn. And this study has established a new detail: these animals have for some time cohabited with humans. However, you realize that these unicorns are not quite what you thought they were when you were a kid. Indeed, these prehistoric beasts were huge and hairy. They looked like rhinoceroses and had the coat of a bison. They were at least twice as big as rhinoceroses, and their horns, composed of keratin, could measure up to 1.5 meters. The fossils of these unicorns were found in southern Siberia, and scientists assume that this area was a shelter from the harsh climate. But this little discovery won't change much in the way you imagine unicorns. You probably don't know the story of Sandra Mansi. This young woman was walking one day in 1977 with her 2 children on the shores of Lake Champlain, Vermont. Lake Champlain is not a place without history. According to legend, it is home to a very ancient lake creature named Champ. This marine reptile, which resembles the plesiosaurus, has been mentioned in native stories since the early 17th century. Sandra Mansi may have vaguely heard of these legends while she was enjoying the lake, which straddles the United States and Canada. But suddenly noticing that something had emerged from the water, she drew the attention of her children, before beginning to examine the strange apparition, which vaguely looked like a long-haired head. Suspecting that it was the legendary Champ, she took a photograph. She later assured that the animal had kept its head above water for about 10 minutes. Eager to publicize her adventure, she soon told the press about it, using her photograph as proof. Several years later, experts established the authenticity of this photo, and the New York Times published Sandra Mansi's adventure. Cryptozoologists saw this photo as the strongest evidence of Champ's existence, but scientists remained skeptical. In addition, one circumstance cast doubt on Sandra's story. She did not own the negative of the photo. She claimed to have gotten rid of it, which is implausible, because negatives have the value of original documents, and can be very useful in case of lost copies. Why would Sandra get rid of the negative of such an important photo? Furthermore, scientists had speculated that the neck emerging from the water might have been a common tree trunk that was floating, which would not be surprising, as thick forests surround the lake. Finally, Sandra was never able to indicate where the photo was taken. In short, her credibility has fallen off. Gradually, the case of Sandra Mansi was forgotten. However, many other testimonies have been reported since then about the possible existence of Champ, and the debate between cryptozoologists and scientists continues to this day. Let's transport ourselves to the 18th century, to the north of the ancient country of Javadin, located in the present Lozère. It is the summer of 1764, and the 7 Years' War has ended a year earlier. Little by little you hear about bloody attacks in the region. What could it be? You learn that it is not the work of a criminal, but of a ferocious beast hungry for human flesh, which is rampant in the region where you are, and you are both very frightened and very curious. This monster makes such a carnage that your main desire is to capture or kill it. You naturally follow the evolution of the story very closely. The newspapers, which do not have to relate the facts of war anymore, do not cease speaking about this succession of attacks committed by this mysterious beast of Javadin, which one imagined to have the shape of a large wolf. In a word, it is the only subject of the day. You see that what was at first a local news item became almost a state affair. The beast of Javadin aroused the concern of the whole country and even worried the royal court. The king's troops were dispatched to the scene. The churchmen, convinced that this beast was a divine punishment, encouraged the population to do penance. A huge hunt was organized to kill this diabolical animal. The enterprise is apparently crowned with success. The beast of Javadin, a large wolf, has been killed, and it is a peasant, Jean Chastel, who has carried the stab. You are relieved, but not so much. Gray wolves, at that time, were legion, and could always attack livestock and human beings. But you are nevertheless more at ease because no deadly attack has been reported in the Javadin country since Jean Chastel killed the animal. Let's imagine that one day you wake up with a strange and irresistible urge to chase away doubt on a very specific subject. Indeed, you are determined to obtain a definitive answer to this question: were the centaurs good or evil? Let's add, for the sake of plausibility, that you are what we call a cryptozoology enthusiast. In other words, what interests you most are legendary creatures whose actual existence has not been proven. You are naturally eager to learn about cryptids, that is, mythical animals that impress the imagination. Let's also say that you hate ambiguous and indecisive things. You want to know at all costs if centaurs are benevolent or perverse. So you occupied the libraries, you studied the Greek epics, the works of universal history, the mythological compilations, and little by little the subject became clearer and fascinated you. And as you are patient and diligent, you gather satisfactory elements of answer and even exalting, because your readings inspired you, especially the liveliest enthusiasm for Chiron, the eldest of the centaurs, civilizing hero, renowned for his bravery and his science, the educator of many warriors, and who was killed unfortunate by Heracles, one of his disciples. However, your first question is not clear-cut, and in truth, it cannot be, you realize with some disappointment. If Chiron and Pholos, for example, are good centaurs, others, not to say most, are brutal, nasty, rapists, and love to get drunk. Even though you are a little further along than you were at the beginning, your question is still open. That's it, that's the end of the video. Tell us in comments which of these mythical creatures fascinates you the most.